Howdy, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the first episode of my tutorial Let's Play series of Dwarf Fortress Masterwork. I had attempted to do a previous Let's Play and found out that I am not chatty enough to do a straight Let's Play of Dwarf Fortress without some sort of structure. So I'm going to be structuring this series as a series of tutorials where I set up each individual industry or each individual product or project, and I'll explain how that's working, how I'm setting it up, and then the periods of time when it's building or creating stuff or long sieges or anything will be done off screen with various shenanigans I'll record and maybe compile those in shenanigan compilations or such, or maybe the fun compilations, which we'll get to later. Anyway, starting off, I'm assuming you know absolutely nothing about Dwarf Fortress. Fantastic. Welcome to what is a really, really fun and a really, really addicting little colony sim. Dwarf Fortress has been around since 2006. It's a colony builder, and the graphics are done originally in ASCII, which is a series of letters and numbers based on 8x8 pixels, or 8x8 characters. Which is a pain in the butt, but there is a texture pack which makes it more visible. But I digress. Mastercraft is a Masterwork or Mastercraft, depending on if you're bad at English or not, is a gigantic mod pack addition to Dwarf Fortress. It adds a whole bunch of new industries, it simplifies and consolidates some, there's some quality of life reworks, and it adds additional playable races, including the humans who I'll be playing as. To download Masterwork, go to the Masterwork forums. I'll put the link in the description. Download it for... They should have the link in it. You'll download it for Windows. There we go. You'll run it and you'll get this and it'll install. You can change settings here as you desire. You can choose the graphics, colors, and the tile set. The tile set is your texture pack. It replaces the default ASCII, which is somewhere around here. Yeah, that's the default ASCII. As you can see, all of the graphics in the entire game would be done in that. With this, it's a little more visible. Choose your color set. I wouldn't mess with too much of this. Maybe turn your calendar speed down if you don't feel comfortable. Settings, etc. And then enabling stuff. That's up to you. You can explore and see what you want to do with that. Then you will launch Dwarf Fortress. And we'll get to playing. So we're going to start by creating a new world. And it does take a little bit of time. When creating a world, make sure you have a couple minutes set aside because it does take a few minutes to render and flesh out. There's a couple options you can choose, and those will affect the world that's spit out. Now, worlds are permanent, meaning that you can have multiple different fortresses going on the same world. Well, you can't have them going at the same time, but you can have a fortress going on one world, have that fortress fail, and start a new fortress on the same world. The history will be the same, and as a matter of fact, you can go to your old fortress and reclaim it, potentially. So, when creating a world, you start with size. I like large. Large gives you more options as far as where to start. History determines history. I mean, there's civilizations and events and stories and historical figures, and it's really intricate and really detailed. I'm not super familiar with looking at it, reading it, and finding out all the information, but the game kind of generates its own lore. And so you can set that. I like very short because it's easier on my computer during this rendering process, and it's not super important for this world. Number of civilizations, you can change that if you want. Beast, savagery. Savagery it kind of determines how hard the game is. I like to leave it on medium. And then mineral occurrence, if you're new, definitely want to do frequent. Gives access to more. Well, I shouldn't have to explain mineral occurrence, but yeah, it adds more minerals, obviously. I would recommend frequent for beginners. Hit Y to go, and it generates, and it takes a while, and you can watch it generate. But I'm going to take this time to talk about kind of my vision and what the plan is going to be. Oh, excuse that voice crack. What the plan is going to be. So at the very beginning, I will do a tutorial on, well, first off, I'm doing this tutorial, which is downloading, installing, world generation, selecting your map, and the embark screen. And the next tutorial I do, next episode, will be the very first project, which is setting up your basic construction facilities, workshops, teaching you how to do stockpile workflow, and kind of outlining where everything's going to go. So I'm building kind of a human hold style base, which is a walled hold that has a keep in the center, and the keep contains offices, some other stuff. I'll get to that when I get to that. The keep is kind of the central fortification, and there's the walls around it. The wall has towers and such. There will be a guild tower, which is, again, I'll explain it when I get there, but it's going to be a big, tall structure that contains a lot of the guilds, which are human unique items that are human unique buildings, which provide crafting tasks and additional training for your craftsmen in that type. I'll have a bazaar. Humans are largely based on trade, unlike dwarves, which are mainly based on metalwork and smithing. So humans do a lot of selling of items and trading for other items or gold coins and such. And so I'll have kind of a bazaar with a bunch of merchants. And then I'll have several industrial cottages or industrial districts kind of dotted inside of the keep that have all of the stuff associated with them. If you don't know what I'm talking about on any of these, don't worry, it'll be explained later on. And also a system of minecarts that runs from my quarry and processing there, and an intricate minecart system for taking stuff back to the main hold from the quarry. So as the world continues to create, we can kind of look at it and see. Whoa. Okay, yeah, it had a little lag spike there. It's placing civilizations right now. Now the dark blue streams and strands are big rivers. The dark blue. The light blue are streams. Smaller than that are brooks, and those can exist in some other places. And the big, what looks like a water tile, is a lake. We're going to try to start on a spring. We may not. It'll just depend what kind of terrain we look for. And I'll explain more as we get there. Site selection plays a huge part in how good the friendliness of your fort. How do I phrase that better? Your embark region plays a large part in the difficulty of your game. That's what I'm trying to say. And so as you can see, the Age of Myth, it's adding years and historical figures, dead events, stuff like that. So I could go and look at this more if I wanted to, but I'm going to hit enter and take it. Saving coin information, the most important information to us humans. Now humans, unlike dwarves, which are the only playable race in vanilla Dwarf Fortress. Oh, so once the world's created, you'll go to Start Playing, choose your region, Dwarf Fortress. Adventure and Legends are two other options. I'll do a Let's Play of those later. Legends is actually the kind of your world's history that you can pull up and look at, I think. And Adventure is a single-player mode that kind of lets you run around your world that has been influenced by anything you do in Fortress mode, which is also kind of cool. Kind of a text-based RPG, more or less. To a degree. Now, if you are familiar with vanilla Dwarf Fortress, and you're familiar with the dwarves themselves, some differences with humans. Again, humans are very mercantile, and so a lot of trade happens in gold coins, which I'll explain kind of as I get there. Humans also, instead of getting cave adaptation, which is a thing that dwarves get after they stay underground for too long, they get cave sickness. Now, with dwarven cave adaptation, the dwarves get sick when they come to the surface and get exposed to sunlight and wind. Humans get cave sickness from staying down in the caves for too long, regardless of what time they come up into the sun. So dwarves can stay underground potentially for their entire lives with no ill effects unless they go to the surface, whereas humans can't stay underground for too long. Alright, so this is the map selection screen. This is the overall world map. This is kind of a local map. You've got the X arrow, or the yellow X that indicates. But we're going to start by doing an F search, which is find. X and Y dimensions is the general size of the block you're looking at. And then savagery and evil. The difference between savagery and evil: savagery is wildlife and beasts. Evil is other factions that are opposed to life, or I think there's necromancers and goblins and other nasty stuff. They're both nastiness. Evil is just more evil, if that makes sense. A little more magic kind of evil. Savagery is just wild. Elevation, temperature, and rain. Elevation, temperature, rain, and drainage all can affect the biome that you're in. I don't know the magic combination for the kind of biome I like. I just kind of have to look around for it. I know it's medium drainage, but that's about it. Fluxstone layer you want. Fluxstone. Fluxstone is, let's see if I can get this right, limestone, chalk, dolomite, and marble. And those are all used as components for steel crafting. You want to have some of that. Aquifer, I'm going to leave that as not available. If you're just starting this is a starter world, so no aquifers. Aquifers are pretty much impassable levels that are full of water that you can't go down through, which can be a problem. And then you want multiple for both shallow and deep metals. That way you don't get stuck with just zinc, which is not a particularly useful metal. And you need a little bit of everything, and you want metals, obviously. And then I like to do some soil. Well, I like to do little soil, or some soil, because you want soil on the surface for farming, but you don't want a lot of it down below. That way you can set up minecart systems in the shallow. I'll explain that when I do the minecarts. And then clay, you can do yes or no if you want. Clay gives you access to more crafts, but it doesn't matter too much for me. So I'm going to hit enter to do the search, and it's going to take a little bit. So I will go ahead and cut back to you when we're done. Okay, we're recording. Alright, so the search is complete, and you see all the big flashing green squares. Those are all squares that match the oh lord, I'm struggling for the word. Match the search results. So I'm going to hit escape to browse results. Then I'm going to use my arrow keys to, we have 3 levels of magnification. We have the local level, the regional level, and the world level. Each of the individual squares in the region represents a different kind of I'm not sure there's a better word for it than region. And the local is you'll pick your individual site within that region. So I'm looking for a couple things. I'm looking for neighbors that are not evil, which are designated by the 3 dashed lines here. Specifically, I'm looking for dwarves, goblins, or orcs, or elves. Prefer the first 3 over the elves. Elves don't offer a whole lot of super useful things, but, better than nothing. And as few evil enemies as I can find. Now, that probably won't happen too much. So that's priority number 1. Second priority is I'd like to find a place that's fairly flat. I'm cycling through the views with tab, by the way. This is my civilization. You can change that if you want. In vanilla, it's just between dwarves, but you can choose between different ones here, including the beauty of homosexuals, if you care for it. And civilizations are randomly generated using the random name generator, which is a total kick in the head. It's so much fun. You pick your civilization there, which determines which race you play as, by the way. And that's designated by that very first one. I'm looking for something that's flat by the cliff indicator, so something that's on 0. That'll make it easier for me to build above ground, which is really important for humans. Not for dwarves, because dwarves dig underground, but humans have to build above ground. And there must be trees, and I must have a flugstone layer and plural metals at either the shallow or the deep level. I'll compromise on other stuff too. Oh, I have to have some soil as well, because I want to have farming industry. So I'm going to scroll through the regions with my arrow keys. Furies, Pandashi, Titans, Nagas, Kobolds, Jotar, Great Fiend Spiders, which sound like fun. I'll explain that concept. That's capital F fun. A concept that I'll just leave and let y'all discover itself. Putrid Blendex. I don't know what those are, but they sound mean. Succubi and Werebeasts. Elves, war elephants. War elephants are scary. Oh, elves and orcs, so that's an option. Elves. Where were they? Succubi. Elves, humans and elves. That's a safe embark. So that's a good spot because that's got no evil enemies and elves and orcs as neighbors. Let's see what I can find. Flat. So all of that can work. I'm going to use H, K, U, and M to move this cursor that you'll see up here. Oh, cool. And then I'm going to resize it using Shift, U, and K to a 4x4, which just gives me some more space, or to a 5x5, which just gives me some more space to work with. Then I'm going to look. It's got a little soil and deep and shallow metals, but it doesn't have flugstone, which is problematic. You can use the F1, 2, and 3 keys to highlight the biome and look for it. So that's got the flugstone layer. So I'll have to go to a different location within there that's also flat. So I have access to the flugstone, which is important because, well, it's really hard to get through trade. Is that okay? All right, so that's got a brook. It's got sand. It's got clay. It's got very deep soil, metals, flux-stone. It's got no trees though, which is a problem. Rats. That one's not flat enough. That's oceanic. It's got flux-stone though. I suppose that'll work. Again, make it a 4x4. Clay, sand, deep and shallow. Yeah, that's good. That'll actually be really good. Okay. So, good. So I'm going to go ahead and embark. And I'll see y'all when we get to the embark screen. Welcome to the embark screen. From here, you'll pick what your humans will. I almost said dwarves there. From here, you'll pick what your humans will start out with. There's some pre-made profiles, but we're going to prepare carefully, just so y'all know, or just so I can teach y'all how to do it. So you start out with your starting humans, your, I guess, settlers. Settlers. Can very southern way of pronouncing that. I apologize. Well, actually, I don't apologize. But you can set their tasks here. And so generally, in the beginning, for human or dwarf, you need a miner. Competence usually pretty good. Or skilled. You need a... And you just want him to have the miner. Because if you'll notice, when you increase points, it takes away or adds to your points count down here at the bottom. Levels of skill. And so you want to conserve where you can, and only giving your miner, who you're only going to have digging anyway, only mining skill is not a bad thing. Woodcutter. I generally pair woodcutter with carpenter. Carpenters are in charge of making wooden furniture and wooden tools. And it's just kind of a good pairing in my opinion. Some people like to have it separate. Then you have mason. The mason stays a mason. And I generally have him as a building designer too. And you want a good mason for humans because you'll be doing a lot of stonework above ground. Especially if you take this route. Oh, and you can put a point in stonecrafting too if you want, because humans use stonecrafting from the very beginning, and I'll explain that when we get there. Then you want a fisher dwarf, or fisherman. Sorry, I'm going to make that slip a lot. Forgive me, I'm definitely not an elf spy. Fisherman, I generally leave fisherman as fisherman, and then I have my cook have the fish cleaning skill, because when he's not cooking, he'll be cleaning fish, and cleaning fish allows him to cook. And I'll explain that a little bit later when I do my starting kitchen setup. And so it'll all make sense a little bit later. And then I want a what do I want? A crutch walker. No. Not yet. I want this guy to have a couple points in appraising and negotiating, which will make him a good trader. And also probably a point in organizer and records keeping. He'll be kind of my noble when I set it, or he'll be my starting bureaucrat. I'll explain it when I set it up. And then you, I'll have you as a probably a craftsman. Decisions. You know, I'm going to have him he'll just be a hauler, and I'll save some points for items. So, now I've got my men and women, my settlers, organized based on what I want them to do. I'm going to move to items. And holy mackerel, that's a lot of people. That's a lot of items. So, some things you absolutely always need to bring are picks and axes and an anvil. Because anvils will help you set up metal forges quicker. The picks and axes you can't make otherwise, and so it's important to have. There is a story one time I embarked without an axe, got about 10 minutes into play, and was wondering why no one had chopped any wood. Realized I was totally screwed because I couldn't make a axe because I had no resources for it. I'm going to... You want seeds, but I'm going to go for a little more of a monoculture just because woodstock, not 100% sure what that does. Pineapples. Ratweed is important. Ratweed's kind of it's good for sewer brew, which I'll explain about that later. Cuttlefish is starting food, I suppose. Thread, cloth, bags, and rope. Thread and cloth are medical supplies. Bags and rope. Bags are gathering, so you want to make sure you have some bags and some rope. It's good to have cloth and thread and bags and rope because the textile industry is really hard to set up. And you need you need ropes for wells as well. Pun intended. I don't need 3 quivers. I'll make the quivers separately when I set up my archers, and I don't have a starting hunter, so I don't need that. Buckets are really super useful for a lot of industries. That'll be covered when I get there. Splints are specifically for soap making, which also I'll cover when I get there. Splints are splints and crutches, medical supplies, obviously. Wheelbarrows are super helpful. I may add one more than that. And step ladders are for harvesting fruit. So I've got 137 points left now that I've gotten kind of the important stuff out of the way. I maybe don't need that much booze. I mean, humans can survive without booze. It's just, it's not that big of a deal. I'm going to bring the seeds up to 9 because that's just the size I like. Size of the plot I like to make. And then I want a dog of each. And I want a kidder of each. And then I want a ewe and a ram. I don't have enough points. Oh, decisions. We'll cut out the mung beads. I don't need that many more points. That puts me perfect. So I've got a ewe and a ram now. and assuming nothing dies on me, which is a dangerous assumption to make, that should work all right. All right, what else? Okay, so I need to change. Let's change the group name of the fort name. So capital F to go to fort name. If you want to customize it. If not, whatever. And so it's broken up into a few pieces. Your front compound, your rear compound, your first adjective, and your second adjective. So your name has two parts. And so it could be abacus, or it could be abandoned. Front compound could be abandoned. Rear compound could be abacus. And so the translation right now is abandoned abacus, I think. And then it could be abject. I don't know. I don't have a ton of experience with how all this works. You can just kind of toy around with it if you want. But I'm just going to random. And then for group name, the placement of obtaining. I actually kind of like that. Good job, random number generator. But it's the same thing over here. And I'm going to save this as humans 1 and we'll embark. And it's going to take a while. And hopefully it won't crash. Alright, so we've embarked. You have arrived. After a journey from the mountain homes into the forbidding wilderness, this bit of opening text has not been adapted to other races besides Dwarf, so it still treats it like it's Dwarves. Whatever. And then the rallying cry of all Dwarf Fortress players, regardless of race, is strike the earth. Loading, loading, loading. Yeah. The jet engine of the cooling fans in my computer is attempting to send it into high altitude flight. Alright, and this is where we'll pick up for next time. So thank y'all so much for joining me, and I will see y'all